Cam, welcome to Behind the Scenes. This is a brand new podcast series with Storm Talent. We've known each other for a little while now, and I think your story is absolutely awesome. I wanted to thank you, especially for being the very first guest on our podcast. So cheers for coming and spending your evening with me. As I mentioned, you've done some really incredible things, so I feel really privileged to have you here.
Cool. Thank you, mate.
For those that don't know who you are, you run cybersecurity at the moment for a leading analytics business. They're doing some really interesting things. They've recently had a £40 million Series B investment, which is awesome. They collect and process behavioural data for some pretty awesome businesses like Charlotte Tilbury, Burberry, and Auto Trader. But before I think we talk about current times, it'd be awesome to take our listeners back to the very beginning and understand a little bit more about you, where you came from, where you grew up, and really how you got into tech.
Yeah, of course. So I think it started out just me messing around. I was just constantly messing around with things. So like even as early as I don't know, 3 years old, I'd be like pulling wires at the TV, just seeing what was going on in there. Didn't understand any of it, but I just wanted to find out how things worked. I think the main way it started out ended up being in towards hacking was I did good in IT at school in general, and then on old video games like Modern Warfare and World of War on COD, I used to find people glitching through walls and shooting at me from where I couldn't get them back. So, naturally I try and find out how I could do that as well, which eventually led to mob menus, which is obviously a way level up from there. That's properly trying to manipulate the game. And then from there, I just ended up learning how to DDoS by watching YouTube videos, pretty much.
Expanding on mod menus, what sort of stuff would you be able to do within Call of Duty?
So the mod menus, I've got videos up on YouTube still on my old channel. I can't access it anymore. But literally anything. You could draw something in the sky. You could fly around. You could unlock everyone else's challenges and stuff. And
so you really can manipulate the world then.
You can totally manipulate the world. I remember distinctly we used to have Modern Warfare 2, which is obviously doesn't have zombies function built in. We could make the game into a game of zombies by using care package forts. It was insane. It would just spawn these care package forts with turrets on top, and you get these zombies running at you that don't even exist.
And how old were you when you were doing that?
About 13, I think.
That's fascinating. So how did that then transition into PCs, cybersecurity? How did you first learn about hacking?
I think, as I say, I tried to get back at people who are beating me in the game. So I think it started off with small DOS attacks by using Cain enable to grab IP addresses of people and then lag them or boot them out of the lobby altogether if I was losing to them. And then it's ended up just progressing from there, really, with the mob menus and then Twitter and whatnot.
For our listeners that aren't necessarily au fait with exactly what hacking is, some people have got visions of hooded characters hidden behind laptops in a dark room somewhere. But what is a hacker, and really what are they doing?
I think really a hacker is just taking advantage of any weaknesses. So if a software is obviously just designed incorrectly, it's designed to do one thing, but with oversight of any potential vulnerabilities. So vulnerabilities are just incorrect coding, right? That can be exploited to gain yourself further access or further resources or whatever it may be. And then obviously the other side of it is identities and stuff like that. You can, take advantage of someone's weak passwords, because people in general don't have strong passwords. Even if they're told to, they think they have a strong password, but having your name 2023 exclamation mark that's not a strong password.
For sure.
I saw that smile. I take it that's what you've done.
Hang on, I better just jump off and change my password quickly. Am I right in thinking you can essentially look into people's files? Could you take control of somebody's PC, for example, or is that just stuff for the movies?
No, you definitely could do that. So up-to-date computers, obviously, that's a little bit harder than it would be on the older computers. So obviously, a lot of the world and the military and the government still run on XP, Vista, and things like that, which are obviously a lot more easy to manipulate. The Windows Defender that you get shipped with the current Windows 10 and 11 is completely different to what you used to get. Back then, you could deploy a rat just by sending an exe. That's almost unheard of these days. You can't just send an exe to somebody that's got a rat inside of it. Generally speaking, it's it's lol vast like native Windows binaries and scripts that you're abusing to get that access, which is quite hard.
Okay. And rats, for people that don't know, is that a remote access Trojan?
Yeah.
Okay. And would you feel comfortable sort of explaining a little bit more about what that is? It's fine if you don't want to go into detail, but...
Yeah, so it's effectively, it just gives you complete access over someone's computer. Like some of them are command line based, so you just get access to pulling the files through a terminal, whereas others are much more visual based, where you can literally you have like what's called like a swarm. You have a swarm of computers. So some botnets have that ability, or you have it purely like a rat. You can just see different computer names, and you can click on one, open desktop, and you're straight in, like controlling the user's desktop.
You were around the age of 14 when you first started to make headlines. And for those of our listeners that don't know, on the back of Seaworld mistreating orca whales and keeping dolphins and other animals in captivity and not necessarily treating them, let's say, with the respect and care that all animals deserve, you decided to have some fun and games of your own and really take things into your own hands. Could you expand on the story and maybe tell our listeners what happened?
Yeah, so I don't generally think of myself as a major activist these days. I think it was just the abuse of animals. They can't even help themselves, right? So my mum was, much in the same boat, which is I think really how I turned out the way I did, because I hate the way any abuse of animals. So I was browsing Twitter, and one day I just happened to stumble across like some abuse of these whales, as you mentioned, and I just thought, this is disgusting, and clicked into it, read through the threads, found some more, and I ended up just following people on Twitter. But I didn't realize half of them would be anonymous collective, as in the hacking, like decentralized collective. And yeah, I ended up just getting involved with them just by reading their tweets.
Yeah. So were you involved with the anonymous group as a whole?
Yeah, it was called Operation Funkill, which is basically just killing the whales for fun, is what they obviously tried to name it as, to try and be catchy. But obviously that's effectively what's happening, right?
Yeah. And how many anonymous members would you say were part of that movement?
In my like group, I was friends with probably some of the most prominent people in there, and there's only 5 or 6.
According to the papers, you caused chaos, essentially targeting other areas as well. Before we get on to that, I know that there was quite a significant financial hit. And am I right in thinking it was heading towards about $1 million worth of overall revenue loss for Seaworld on the basis of bringing them down? Yeah,
it was. Yeah, I think it wasn't long ago they actually managed to like get a branch closed because of like the loss of like revenue, not directly from me, but from like other people after me. So it's definitely a bigger movement now. They're like, now it's like so widely recognized. Like people were like, oh yeah, like to hell with SeaWorld. But like back then, like nobody really even knew.
Yeah. And that was a DDoS attack?
Yeah, DDoS attack, yeah.
And that was so nobody could essentially purchase tickets through the website?
Yeah.
Am I right in thinking you also took down the Devon and Cornwall police computers?
Yeah. I think that's what annoyed them a little bit, because like, I think it like ended up no routing their site. So I hit it for like 5 minutes, and I thought, what am I doing? And I turned it off, and then I panicked because it didn't come back for like hours. I ended up just being like, right, switch VPN. Like, no way, I'm closing these tabs now. This is all behind me now. This didn't happen.
Let's book a flight to the Bahamas quick.
Yeah, legit, yeah.
Cool. So you were eventually tracked down. How did this happen? I know that there were things like Twitter bomb threats, for example, to American airlines companies like Delta and even the White House. Did you have various crime agencies tracking you?
Yeah. So there was the bomb threat was tipped off to the NCA by like the FBI and the Secret Service. I didn't do that, right? And the rest of it I did. I had no problem admitting it. Like all the DDoS stuff was me, definitely me, and a bunch of all the other stuff as well. But I didn't do the bomb threat, but I was definitely getting tracked by like a lot of people. And I don't think it was that difficult to find me. I think they just finally thought, okay, it's time to get this guy. Due to the bomb threats, was obviously much more severe than the rest of it.
From memory, when we spoke before, am I right in thinking that court went on for probably about 2 years?
Yeah.
So what happened during that time? Did your schoolwork take a hit? Was it stress and strain on your family life?
Yeah, it was crazy. So I had a free pass pretty much in school for like those whole 2 years. Like the school ended up barring any press, barred anyone from talking to the press about it. Like just basically the school were pretty good. The school were pretty good at trying to keep me out of the press's eye, obviously because the court didn't grant it. Family life was obviously strained. Like it was just in general trying to enjoy anything. It's like any sort of trauma in your life, right? You're just trying to enjoy stuff and it just comes back over your head. You're like, oh yeah, I forgot I have this terrible thing going on right now.
So did schooling suffer, or did you have things like tutors to get you through GCSEs, for example?
No, I wouldn't have thought it suffered. No. I pretty much just used the opportunity to not do homework. So that's the fact. I was like, no way I'm going home and like enjoying the only free time I get to do this. Well, I'm
Hall pass.
pretty much. Yeah, it was awesome. I should have took more advantage of it, really, looking back. But yeah.
I know your mum was a bit of an activist, and I think that was probably one of your sort of key inspirations of doing what you did. Do you think she was secretly proud of you for sort of taking action and doing what you did?
I think the reasoning, yeah, and I think obviously retrospectively she can look back and say that it was great. At the time, she definitely didn't let on. Like, there was no way. Like it was just, she was very angry like for the entire 2 years about the whole thing. So.
And we're back after a very short break. So throughout the 2 year period, obviously there was interest from various different crime agencies. You'd mentioned to me off the podcast that there was the FBI involved. Who else and which other agency representatives were there throughout that 2 year period?
I think it was primarily the NCA, and then obviously there was some representatives of the FBI and Secret Service, which they just informed me in the courtroom. I had no idea that was going to happen.
Okay. And you didn't know who they were? You didn't know?
They didn't say anything. She just announced to the court, she's like, I have to let everyone know for something to do with the law. She was like, that there are some representatives of the United States, blah, 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 and like all the different agencies. So
I can imagine that was incredibly intimidating. You sat in front of a judge, that's scary enough as it is. There's a jury, and then obviously you've got your representatives. What was going through your mind when you were in that position?
I don't know. I think the main concern was obviously A, I don't want to go to jail, and B, I certainly don't want to go to jail in America. Like, there's no way that would not pan out very well.
Was there a chance of that happening?
They applied for extradition, yeah.
During that period, did you have any support? Were there any agencies, for example, that stepped up and said, "Hey, look, we can put XYZ in place to help you get through this"?
Yeah. So yeah, the NCA were amazing. Like they were like looking back on it, you can tell. Like at the time, I thought they wanted me to just go to jail, but like looking back on it, like they were like actually nice guys. They wanted me to learn. They wanted me to like suffer a bit for it, obviously. And most importantly, I think they wanted me to be an asset rather than just rotting away in a jail cell. So they gave me these, as I think I mentioned to you before, but they gave me all these like career fairs and stuff, and put me in touch with all these like different companies. And I just thought at the time it's never going to happen, but it ended up, one of them came back to me. I got in to one of the companies there called Blue Screen. They were quite a small SOC at the time. I think they're growing a little bit now. And from there, I just started, in a SOC, like doing some SOC analyst work. And ever since then, I've just been doing pretty much the same thing.
Let's talk about vulnerabilities then within a workplace. What do you look out for then predominantly as a security specialist within a business, let's say with 120 people? What are your keys or your tick boxes when you come in and you're auditing and you're thinking, right, we need XYZ looking after? Where do you start?
It really depends on the company you're working for. So, prime example being, for me, where I am now, like my main concern is identities. So we're pouring investment into, making sure that we get identity squared away. We get a proper IDP. We get these, these policies enforced. We make sure that these identities are locked down because we're primarily cloud, right? So, and for that reason, we've got very little as well. We've got very little publicly available endpoints. So we just want to make sure that our identities are absolutely solid, which is, our primary motive at the moment for like improving our security.
Yeah. Would you use things like two-factor authentication, for example?
Yeah, two-factor authentication. There's a lot more. There's stuff like context-aware access. You can get like time-based access. You can get there's a lot, and obviously there's not only one way to access an account. There's stuff like access tokens. You can get dynamic access tokens. You can make sure that you're using proper like practice when you're using like accessing like these identities and any sort of authentication. So what's
context aware access?
So there's a step down from that, which is like using like a CASB solution where you can say, okay, Sam works, in the UK. He's got no reason to be working outside of the UK. We'll put in like a conditional access policy. We'll say that Sam works in the UK. He's going nowhere else. And then you can't sign in from anywhere else. Context aware is a bit smart on that. It's a little bit like, okay, Sam signed in from the USA. All right, but he's used MFA. So that's bringing the risk down quite like significantly. And there's more than that. It can go to stuff like, right, do MFA and then also get a notification to your phone, go onto your email, read me this back, and enter your recovery phrase or whatever it may be that you set on your context aware. It gives you basically more authentication options to prove you are who you are, as opposed to just saying, okay, it's a password for you to sign in from anywhere in the world.
We'll be aware of spyware, ransomware, for example. We've touched on this previously, but how prominent are those attacks now, and should people be worried?
Well, people in general, probably not. There's not a lot like that would affect the private person. Like there's stuff like the App Store that can be a little bit dodgy. In general, the Apple App Store is good. Google Play can be a bit dodgy because the verification process is quite easy to get on there. Just the recent stalkerware outbreak of these apps that are basically just, you download them, they just watch everything you do on your phone. Malware in general, like that, you're going to get malware, but it's unlikely they're going to target you with it as such. It would be much more like you just download something that's malicious and then it can delete your files, or you might end up getting like some files that your PC corrupted. Spyware, things like that, definitely watch out for, because obviously you've got like keystroke monitoring, any sort of banking data being stolen. That's obviously your livelihood, so make sure watch out for that. Especially if you're like someone who's got a lot of money. Obviously, me, I'm not going to get targeted. I've got no money. No one's going to bother trying to raid my 20 quid. So,
In terms of monitoring keystrokes, for example, have you ever used anything like a keylogger? And really, what are the advantages of something like a keylogger and monitoring people's strokes?
Well, yeah, so obviously you can get software ones and you can get the HID-based ones. The HID-based ones, I think that's the ones you're referring to, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So the HID ones, obviously, they're completely stealthy, right? So unless you work in some major high-tech environment, nobody's going under your desk every day and checking if you've got like a keylogger plugged in or any sort of like wireless device stuck at the back of your thing that don't belong there. So you can basically just plug it into the end of a keyboard cable and then plug that into your PC, and then or someone else's PC. And the keyboard isn't smart enough to know whether or not there's a keylogger in between. It's just a pass through, and then that's obviously taking the data out of that. The problem is, obviously, you just get, imagine if I had it on yours, it would just be your emails jumbled up with some Google searches, and you got to basically just distinguish that. But it wouldn't be overly hard to do that.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, you're just looking through a full log of text to try and find that password or try to find an email address, for example.
Yeah. Or for instance, like, investigative journalists, they're writing about something that's top secret or taking notes. That's obviously a very legit use case that people might use that for. Like, what are they talking about? Who are they talking about? Who are they criticizing? That sort of thing.
What's a 0-day vulnerability?
Yeah, so a 0-day is basically a vulnerability that hasn't been patched yet, and then it's released. So there's actually been just a recent 0-day with Apple. I'm not entirely certain of what the details are, but it's a WebKit one, and it only really requires like a crafted link to be clicked. So update your phone. There's also, there's like the Log4j incident that we mentioned earlier. That's just taking a string. Instead of just logging the string, it executes the code within that string, which is, I just don't understand. It's a login library. I don't know why it doesn't just log the string as a string, because that's all it's supposed to be doing. But obviously that's the vulnerability where it lies, because someone's configured it to be like that.
Yeah, I know loads of people suffered with Log4j, didn't they? And I think it was quite a well-renowned one. So certainly some people have seen some success with that.
Yeah,
cool.
Certainly.
Yeah, cool. For those that are worried then about hackers, let's talk through the importance of vulnerability management. So how could our listeners really tighten their cybersecurity belts?
There's generic stuff like using your email account. Make sure your email account of all things is safe, because I get people asking me all the time, like, how do I get my account back for Instagram, Facebook, because I've been hacked on Facebook or something, or phished on Facebook, and their password for their Facebook is the same as their password manager, it's the same as their email, and then they're completely compromised. They've got nothing left because all of that is circling back to that one email address. If you're going to make anything safe, it's your password manager, and your email. So you want to enable MFA, You might even want to enable a second password. Like services like ProtonMail allow you to have a second password and MFA just to be extra safe, to decrypt your contents of your mailbox as well. So just make sure those two core services are safe, and then you just generate your passwords as a password manager. Is very little else you need to be worried about. Generally speaking, if you've just got a phone and you've just got like a MacBook, there's not a lot of threats out there you've got to be really careful for. Obviously, it's like anything, just be like kind of careful when you're browsing the web. But stuff like IoT, when I mention that, I mean like don't just buy any old smart home device. Like, there's these ones on Amazon you buy for like £100 as a webcam on there that you'll watch your house with. Don't buy some 20 quid one from some unknown brand, because it's not that they're untrustworthy. It's more that they don't know how to develop that stuff. They don't put the R&D into that. They don't secure that properly. So your camera in your living room or your kids' room could be, streaming to the web and showing your kids sleeping, which is an awful idea.
Real weaknesses. Do you think that stuff happens quite frequently?
Oh yeah, you can go on a site called Showdown. I'm not going to say what you type in there, but
for sure, yeah.
You can go on there and you can find it's not even just like cameras. It's stuff like stupid stuff like kettles and fridge freezers and heating systems. And the other day it was like a cremation like urn, like some people being like someone's funeral. You can watch online on Showdown. It was posted online about like a vulnerability. Why is that not secure, and why is it on the internet?
That's insane.
It's mental.
It's a weird and wacky world out there, dude. You've got to be so careful.
Yeah, certainly.
What are your thoughts on ChatGPT?
I love it. It's amazing. It's amazing.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think it's probably like the Bitcoin like opportunity of like my age, because I wasn't around for Bitcoin. I wasn't old enough to be dealing with Bitcoin. But ChatGPT, I'm like right on top of it, and like obviously it's not perfect as yet because it's like basically in pre-release still. But when it's evolved a little bit, it'll be amazing.
Yeah, I think they're bringing out a new version before long, aren't they?
Yeah, GPT-4.
That's right. So what sort of use cases, examples of use cases have you got for ChatGPT? Like, what are you using it for personally?
Yeah, I'm using it fairly frequently. It's even stuff like summarizing stuff. If I want to pump in loads of technical stuff that I'm dealing with, or jobs that I want summarizing really neatly and really simply put, and like deliver it well to a good audience, ChatGPT can just transform it like that. Starting off a script, if I want a script doing, it's going to be huge. If I use, especially for the API version, if I want a script starting, I can just say, write me a script that does X, Y, Z. These are the parameters. This is what I want. I want to make sure this is safe. I want to use key vaults, etc. It will start it off. It's going to be wrong at some point, but I don't mind. If it's going to write me out, like 500 lines of code while I'm doing something else, I can go back to that, fix it up a little bit, and then smack, it's done.
I've been rewatching Mr. Robot, which I suppose was the inspiration for wanting to get you on. Have you ever watched that series?
Definitely, I watched the whole thing through, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Do you think that reflects sort of hacker culture? I know it is slightly glorified, but do you think it gives a good example, let's say, of hacker life? Yeah,
obviously it's glorified for TV, but the actual representation of hacker life, yeah, it's like even the anti-attacks he uses, like the specific timings he uses them. It is bang on. Like in one scene, I can't remember exactly what he was doing, but I remember thinking this is ace because it was like, oh, I'm going to brute force this, and he only had like something like 30 minutes to get this girl out of jail, and then he says, I can't brute force it because this will take too long, which is exactly right. You can't just brute force something in like 30 minutes. So he ends up using some like Bluetooth exploit on the police car, and then like radio into thingy to let them out of jail, something like that. But it's just like bang on. That's like perfect.
How are you spending your time away from work?
Well, actually, I'm probably going to go on Apex in a minute. I go gym quite a lot. Other than that, that's literally it because it's winter. I don't really do anything. Like we just stay in and watch stuff. So,
are you Xbox or PS?
PC.
PC. Oh, okay. Definitely. Yeah, that was a silly question. I should have already gathered that. But I think you can do cross-platform these days, can't you? So if you ever want a game, we'll have a go.
Definitely.
Cool.
For it.
So sweet. Sounds good. Dude, thank you so much for taking the time to meet me. And let's catch up soon.
Cool. Thank you, mate.
All right, dude. Peace.
Cheers.
Bye.